All right, we are rolling, counting us down.
Uh-oh.
3, 2.
I'm afraid.
You're listening to Missing Out with Lex Michael and Tari J. Let's start the show. Hey guys, welcome back to Missing Out. I'm Tari J.
I'm Lex Michael.
And today we're joined by special guest, friend of the show, JQ Salazar. Meow, 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 meow. Welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. For those who are uninitiated, those who haven't listened to the show before, what we do here is we introduce each other to different media, whether it be movies, music, television, books, spoken word, experiences, things that have built us up as people. We share those with each other. We share those with you, the audience, and we try to hope that builds you up as well. We are the retrospective that is introspective.
I like to think we're all helping each other cope.
Hell yeah. It's a hard, hard world.
It's a hard, hard world, and yeah, it's all so fragile and finite. And that's what we're here for, kids.
Oh yeah. So this week Jay has brought in the Darren Aronofsky 2006 movie, The Fountain. So yo, you got to pitch this. This is our segment called The Pitch, where you tell everybody what they are missing out on in this feature. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Do your thing, Jay.
Okay. So The Fountain, it's a 2006 film that one of my favorite films of all time. Very, very underappreciated, I feel like. Definitely didn't do any impact at the box office back in 2006. But it's a film that's about essentially life and death, but also kind of a tragic love story. Very psychedelic, very haunting, very visual. I feel like there's no other film like it. So, yeah, The Fountain.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like I have to read the synopsis for people because it's so misleading that it makes my insides hurt.
The synopsis as listed where?
As listed when you Google The Fountain.
Okay, so it's the first thing that comes up before you get all the links. And
yes.
Such. Okay.
So it is a man, Hugh Jackman, travels through time on a quest for immortality and to save the woman, Rachel Weisz, he loves. And it's like,
that's sort of
you're
true.
Wrong. All of it's wrong.
I mean,
it's bullshit.
But yeah, that's basically not the story.
And that's how it was advertised. Like, that's how the trailers as well try to convey it.
Since I just watched it again, I watched the trailer for it on the DVD, and they very much emphasize like the different times. Like they actually like say that the future timeline is in the year 2500, which in the movie there's nothing concrete like that, you know?
Right.
I remember watching this trailer a whole bunch in high school. I remember we would just throw lines from the trailer at each other constantly.
Right. Oh, dude, this was like, I was obsessive about it. I watched the trailer like 20, 30 times probably, like in a day. Like I would just ogle over it because at the time I'd never seen visuals like that. And
right.
My idea of like what the film was at that point based on how it was being marketed was like insane too. So I was really, I was basically camping out for this one.
Yeah, I remember you being super, super into it at the time. I remember watching it in the theater in 2006 and feeling like I didn't really get it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's easy to like not get if you're going in thinking it's like this weird time travel story. Like I didn't watch the trailer before I watched it. And so I was just like, maybe it's like the book/movie, The Time Machine, where this dude is like, I'm going to go back in time. Like all the like classic,
right.
like time travel movies and stories where someone is like literally going back in time to try to change things, ultimately to realize that it's futile. And you're like, okay, that is what I went in expecting. But then you get into the movie and like you have to really understand that that's not what it is. It's a nonlinear storytelling in a way that like you have to realize that some of these pieces are metaphors.
Right.
You gotta, it's not, there's nothing literal about either the conquistador pieces or the bubble pieces. The core storyline is about Hugh Jackman's character, Tomas, essentially dealing with the grief and inevitability of his wife's demise.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, and it's like that's the best way to sell it to somebody if you really want them to enjoy it. It's just really a story about two people dealing with death.
Right.
But just kind of is like very flourishing in its tangents.
I mean, I feel like you can't sell it without really talking about how visually stunning this movie is.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many sequences that are just mind blowing to look at, and once you kind of start to dive in to like Aronofsky's reasonings behind them, and also just like all of the nebula footage, which is actually just micro. It's what is it? What
right,
I
it's
forget.
like petri dishes.
Yeah. Which is insane. Yeah. So like just the amount of like detail and love that is put into making this visually stunning, I would call it a masterpiece of cinema.
Hey.
That's I like your masterpiece voice.
Thank you.
That's how you know he really likes something, is when he uses his masterpiece voice.
Yes.
I really had no idea. I was like, I don't know how Tari's going to take this one, because I knew that you hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I had quite an experience watching this movie this time, because I had not seen it since that first time in 2006, and it was the last thing I did before coming to do the show today, and I'm still like, I'm processing a lot of really intense feelings that this movie stirred up in me, and I feel like now I have sort of fallen in love with it in a way, and I'm not sure if it's for the exact same reasons that you did, but I would venture to guess that there's a great deal of overlap.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Okay, so I'll say this is that, like, when I went into it in high school, like, I was very much, like I was saying, like, I was hyped up for it, and then it turned out to be like a completely different movie from what I thought it was going to be, and I was like, man, I don't even get it. I felt like very, young and naive, and I was like, I just don't get it. But it was like the atmosphere that it evoked, and the feeling, and the score. I mean, we could talk about the score as its own podcast, I feel like, 'cause in my opinion, it's my favorite film score ever.
The music by Clint Mansell, who collaborates with Aronofsky pretty regularly.
Right. And also the Kronos Quartet was like part of that. And they also collaborated on the Requiem for a Dream soundtrack, which is obviously very, very well known. Even if you don't know where it's from, you've definitely heard the Requiem.
Oh yeah, you've heard it in trailers for other things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But anyway, like, just all that, like, it just had me, but like, I wasn't, I hadn't experienced enough in life to like be able to really, feel sympathetic towards this film, or like understand it even like on that level of, life and death and love and stuff, because I was young. But like, the aesthetics of it kept me coming back, and that's why I rewatched it countless times throughout the years. And every time I watch it, it's definitely different. Like, you don't, it's not like you get it, like you feel like you get it, and then like the next time you see it, you get something different. And that's just the kind of movie it is, I think.
Yeah, I feel like this is the kind of movie that grows with you. Like, I don't think that I would have been able to appreciate this guy wrestling with the things that he was if I had not been the age, like in my like early 30s, being like, yeah, we're all gonna die. Like, I feel like if I was watching it in my like teens or like early 20s, I'd be like, okay, I get the gist. Like, I like the conquistador stuff because it's visually cool and there's action, but I don't necessarily connect with this guy and his struggle. If anything, I'd be like, what's his deal? Because he's kind of mean to his dying wife.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like this is exactly the right time in my life, or maybe the first time in my life where this could truly hit me the way I think it hit me, because we're all right around the same age, and this is about the time, like around 30, I feel is where you really start to become aware. And this is was this something Hugh Jackman talked about while he was giving interviews for this movie? He was talking about how, like, when you hit 30, you become sort of aware that it is finite, and oh shit, I'm actually gonna die eventually, and you start really feeling the weight of that. And I don't know why, but it has been so prevalently on my mind lately. This idea of everything being finite, of there absolutely being an end for all of us in terms of reality as we perceive it, and how that best case scenario on a long enough timeline, it still happens, and it happens to every living thing. And so on top of the concept of your own demise, you become aware by extension that other people's lives are finite as well, and are every bit as fragile as yours is. And so the fear of loss becomes incredibly powerful and at times overwhelming. And I don't know why, but lately I've been heavily, like really intensely dealing with a lot of these concepts and my emotional responses to them. So when I watched this today, I came right here after I watched it, but I feel like when we're done, I need to go home and just sort of sit and reflect for a little while.
Yeah. I feel like this is a good time to put up that sweet, sweet spoiler wall. Like this like Mandy, which we talked about last week, isn't necessarily a movie that can be specifically like spoiled per se.
In terms of plot.
Right. Because like the synopsis and all the commercials will tell you that like his wife is dying and he's doing stuff to try to prevent it. I think that like a lot of this movie is in the journey and in the execution of the visuals and the individual moments. But like, if you don't want to hear an in-depth discussion about those moments without context, then I would say like pause this right here. Go watch the movie. You can find it on the internet. It's free on Tubi TV. You can also rent it on Amazon and all that stuff. So I would say do that, watch it, and then come back. We'll still be here, unless the apocalypse happens, and then it doesn't matter to you anyway. So that is my spoiler wall, and now I'm throwing it back to Jay. Pow!
Yeah, I don't know. I think like the one thing you can spoil, I guess, would be that his wife dies, which, you know, like, I mean, are people coming into this movie thinking that he's going to save her? I don't know if that's like...
They've clearly never seen an Aronofsky film before. His goal is rarely to make you feel nice things.
Right. Dude, real quick, I did want to touch on, I don't know how much you guys knew about, but like how this is like, this was a failed production for a long time before it came out the way it did.
Yeah, right. He was trying to put it together right after Requiem, right? And he got Brad Pitt on board based on Requiem, and I guess whatever the version of the script he had at the time was.
Right, and Kate Blanchett was the other one. But at the time they were going to give him a budget of $70 million, and then Brad Pitt pulled out for whatever reason.
I think it's something to do with he wanted script revisions and they wouldn't budge.
Oh yeah, maybe. But I guess eventually, you know, it was shut down. And Aronofsky, I remember reading how he said that he just couldn't get it out of his mind. Like it was haunting him that he had to get it made still. So then he re-entered negotiations at like half the budget with Hugh Jackman. Which, you know, at the end of the day, thank you for doing that, because I love Brad Pitt and all, but this is like a Hugh Jackman moment. You know, like to me, it's like top 3, you know, performances from him. And I already love Hugh Jackman, but I don't know. What do you guys think of all that?
I definitely feel like if Brad Pitt was in the driver's seat, it would have been like a Brad Pitt movie.
Yeah,
and like I don't even know what changes he would have tried to implement, but I don't think that they would have added to it. He saves
his wife because he's Brad Pitt, famous movie actor.
Right, of course. He does it by just looking at her, and then he like smooches her, and then she's like, "Oh, I guess your smooches are the cure to cancer." And then
he's like, "It's because I drank the white stuff from the tree. Now I have magic healing kisses."
Of course. Yeah. You got to drink that tree jizz.
And now, like, cut to 13 years later, and we're on The Fountain 17, and it's just 17 movies of it's like his born Brad Pitt just globe hopping through time and shit, just magic kissing problems away for everybody.
Right, of course. He uses bubble transport,
I guess.
And that's how he gets around and shit. Yeah. And he's like he's the version from the end of the movie, the Hugh Jackman that looks a little like Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, I was calling him Voldemort, Hugh.
That first shot when he's in the black cloak, he looks very much like Voldemort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that also it seems like the changes in the scripts were because like Aronofsky himself had grown up, and not grown up, but like he had gotten to a different place in his life. And when he was writing it, his his parents were like diagnosed with cancer, and he was dealing with that. And so I feel like a lot of that contributed to where the script came from, and like it really infused a lot of character into the Tommy character. And I think that like if he had gone through with it back then, it wouldn't be as impactful as it is now.
Yeah, I can see that. He did release but he drew a graphic novel of the Fountain based on the original script, which got published at the time when he thought that the movie wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I very much now want to pick that up.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely way more on the visual with the space and the space visuals and like the psychedelicness.
Yeah,
of it.
part of what enabled him to finally make the movie for the lower budget was that he just took these really massive sequences from the script that were going to be super expensive and just excised them.
Yeah, one of them that I read about was that he wanted there to be a big giant like battle between the Mayans and the conquistadors. But then because of the budget cuts, it ended up just being like one guy versus the army of Mayans, which I think ultimately ended up working out better because
as metaphor, right? It's one guy trying to overcome something insurmountable that will almost certainly win.
Right. And that's why I'm saying like I think this is the best outcome anyway. Because like I don't know, like yeah, like do we really need a giant army battle? You know, when it's not about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it would look cool for sure, but it might have ultimately felt superfluous.
Right.
Yeah.
And then seeing Noah, I can imagine.
Right, like that's exactly where my head went. Like it would, I feel like he finally got to get a lot of that stuff out of his system when he made Noah.
Right.
And also, I do think like he finally got to work with Russell Crowe on Noah as well. And Russell Crowe was somebody he went to between Brad Pitt and Hugh Jackman. But apparently, dude was so exhausted from being on boats from Master and Commander that he's like, nah, I'm gonna go home for a little while. No more boats. And Aronofsky, I'm sure, tried to convince Russell Crowe that there aren't actually boats in this picture, but Russell Crowe is not having it.
Yo, side note, Master and Commander is tight.
Yeah, I've still never seen it.
Oh, come back. Come back and do that one too.
Okay. What did you guys make of the kind of like almost like a subplot about his wedding ring that he loses?
I thought it was really interesting because I feel like it. I liked the metaphor that essentially his wedding ring is actually his connection with his wife, and that like he lost track of her as a person in trying to save her. And I really, because there's this moment with his boss where she's like, "Who's with your wife right now?" And he's like, I'm here to fucking try to save her. And it's like, dude, you lost track of like why you're trying to save. It's because of the love that you share, and it's all kind of encompassed in that ring. And I really liked that. Because I also feel like it was a very easy thing to miss.
Yeah, as far as like explicit metaphor, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean the golden circle as a symbol for life is one of the older kind of common culturally shared symbols that there is, going back to the sun. I would assume that's what they're referencing, the sun, that famous Paul McCartney song.
Right. Yes, of course.
Yes. So that as well, and when he loses his connection to his wife, right, he's also losing that ring in the process, that ring symbolizing life. And then at the end of the movie, when he's tattooing himself very painfully with that pen, the ring, the image of the ring is still there, but now it's a black ring that sort of resembles ash in a way.
Yeah.
So the reflection, the darker reflection of life, which is death.
That's a good way to put it. Well, one thing I kind of like my thoughts centered on, because on different viewings, I feel like, you kind of stick with different aspects of the film more. And last night, I really stuck with the ring idea and how he loses it. And that like the way he finds it again is obviously like a giant metaphor, but it's him in the conquistador timeline when he's about to put the ring on after he ate all the tree sap, and he can't put it on. He drops it, and then future him picks it up and puts it on, and like that's kind of like his enlightenment, so to speak, that he comes to terms with the fact that it's okay that she died and that you're going to die, and that's him finding his marriage again, in a sense.
I like that eventually all of the hues come together, which can be interpreted in terms of color and also in terms of person. Yeah. I like that face, Lex. He's like, I see it. I see all the colors.
Like, I don't know where you're going with this. I don't know what you're talking about.
All the hues come together. Because I mean, we have modern Hugh, we have conquistador Hugh, and we have monk Hugh, and eventually, like once regular Hugh gets on track, like then you kind of see, if you were to kind of put this in a more psychological viewpoint, then like the conquistador is definitely more of his like animalistic, like itty type urges, and like the monk is more of his like super ego-y type things, where like you have your enlightenment versus your real primal urges to try to fight against nature. And like eventually they all kind of come together and really have to find the same message, which is that like death is a part of the great cycle, that golden circle where, you know, as you die, you create something new, and that is the only way to really live forever. And so I love that, like, even though it starts fairly disparate, like they all kind of essentially form that circle.
And one of them gets to be plants.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, we all become plants eventually, right?
Right.
I mean, if we're cremated, not so much.
I mean, but like people put ashes.
You'll return to the earth somehow.
Yeah, we eventually get back there. We don't necessarily all become plants, though.
That, I mean, I guess so.
Conquistador Conquistador is breathing rarefied air, in that he gets to be all of those nice plants.
But so is that the way that he ends the book, with Conquistador Hugh becoming plants?
I would assume so, right? Like it seems like well, you know, it seems like all of it is the ending. Like all three timelines, the way they end are the ending to the book, like as if in a metaphor. But I think literally, like that would have been the written ending, was what happens to him.
Right. I mean, that would make sense, because I feel like if I were reading this book and some monk guy appeared and was like, "Yo, I'm a tree now,"
it wouldn't work like
right?
that. I think that like you would read the book and you would get to the ending and you would be like, what do I take from this book? Is that, you know, don't be greedy. Life is you're supposed to die, and you can't have more. Try to create more of it out of nothing. Yeah. And that's kind of what, you know, she's trying to tell him that he needs to learn. So it all really works well in parallel to itself.
Yeah. And I kind of talking about their relationship. I really like just I guess how genuine the interactions between Rachel Weisz and Hugh Jackman are throughout this film. Like you can tell that he is exasperated and he is really like struggling. Like I read somewhere that he essentially decided to have different poses for each of the different Hughs. So his Tommy persona was always hunched over because you feel like he has a weight on his shoulders, whereas like the Conquistador Hugh is very like straight backed and forward leaning because he is all about like conquering, and that's his whole purpose. And I really liked how there are all these moments where you can tell that she is at peace with the concept of dying, and he's still trying to bear the weight of fixing it. Right. And so like I can't praise Rachel Weisz enough for really like diving into this character and really like conveying that idea. Like I know I had read that she went and stayed and talked to people who were dying of terminal illnesses just to get a feel for it, and I feel like she really like sold it.
Yeah, the performances in this are uniformly great, and obviously the movie is carried by those two. But then you also got like in small supporting roles, you've got actors like Ethan Suplee and Donna Murphy, also kind of just adding like really great bits of reality. Plus, you got some a nice ape actor, nice small little monkey guy, who's stellar. Yeah, glad to see.
Dude, how about that? How about that little reveal where it's like, oh, they're working on a monkey.
That was actually, I thought that was pretty well handled.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's just like the way the scene starts. You just assume it's a person they're working on.
Yeah.
Well, and then as soon as they say like we may have to euthanize, I was like, what?
That's how it works with humans. If you can't surgery them, you just fucking put them down. Hell yeah. Um, can- there's a no. There's a weird thing that I guess I couldn't help but like focus in on, in that I know that Hugh Jackman's character Tommy is very focused on curing the brain tumor aspect, and I know that that's painted as like a bad thing because like obsession's always bad. But I couldn't give over the fact that like everyone is really focusing on the fact that like this monkey's brain functioning is being heightened, but he still has this tumor. And like Hugh's like, yo, we gotta like keep going. Like he still is a human. It doesn't matter if he is like functioning at high capacity if he's gonna die. And everyone is like, no, Hugh, you're wrong. And he's like, no, I can't just stop everything I'm doing because this monkey is smarter and also gonna die. Like, it doesn't matter how smart you are if you're in the grave, my dude.
It would, but it would still be, even if it can't cure the tumor, right? Like you could mass market this and make everybody better and make a lot of money.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Like they did cure it at the end, but it was just too late for him.
Yeah.
So he's going to be lonely and broken the rest of his days, but he's going to be super wealthy.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of the world's problems will be solved. So this movie kind of did that.
That's true. I mean, I do really like it, because the idea of this cure also kind of is in line with this idea of like creation through death, which I really liked because of the fact that if it weren't for Rachel Weisz dying, he wouldn't have been working so hard to come up with the cure, and he wouldn't have put together the idea of the sequence of this tree. So in effect, her death led to this creation, even though it didn't necessarily help him directly. Which I also like that as just another little
death
layer.
And rebirth.
Yeah.
Type joint.
Another thing that I honed in on last night, me and my friend watching, we pointed out how there's like kind of this weird motif with hair in the movie. I don't know if you guys caught this.
Yes, the hair, right? Like when Rachel Weisz is in bed and he's whispering to her, you see the hairs on the back of her neck, and then the tree also seems to have hairs that are feeling out into the world.
Right. And then also like, how his hair changes through all the different characters, and how like it seems like hair is kind of like life, and how the less hair, the closer to death they are. Because Rachel Weisz has like the short hair. It seems like she's like recovering from cancer treatments, and then him in the bubble has no hair, and he's like about to die, I guess. But then also like in the opening shot of the film is like this close up of like some weird looking hair that's like embedded in the middle of a cross. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yes.
And the camera like pulls out from a close up into like a medium shot of it, and it's like weird, but then later on it shows that same cross, but there's a ring in the middle of the cross instead of hair. And then I think it shows the hair again. I forget like what in what order it is.
Don't hair cells not die the way regular cells do?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, so in a movie that is all about life and death, maybe there's something there.
Well, I mean, hair is essentially like repurposed dead cells. So like hair itself is another example of like how death can be brought together to create something new.
Right.
If that's what you were getting at.
Yes. And ultimately still because they enter into their hair state as dead cells, they don't die further. They stay in that state and they do not further decompose as
right. Yeah, you can there's no death beyond death, bro. You just live on as follicles. Yeah, we all become follicles in the great hairline of life.
But so then taking it further, right? I'm just skating right past that. To take it a step further, hair growing out of our bodies is literally death from life.
Yes.
So it's just feeding that same cycle.
Right.
Oh man, you guys are touching on some deep stuff here. the whole thing with the commentary on this movie? Do you guys know about that?
I had read that Warner Brothers didn't want to do a commentary track, so Aronofsky was like, "Yo, I'm going to do it from my living room and release it on my website." So, eat a dick, Warner Brothers. So yeah, there's that.
Right. Yeah, I remember I listened to it back when it came out. I don't remember it, but I remember like he doesn't divulge a lot of the metaphorical meanings or anything, which is totally, within his style. He's never really done that. But very interesting nonetheless. For anybody who wants to listen to the commentary on that, you can find it on his website.
Yeah. So we like to kind of wrap these pieces of media into bigger ideas, and like we've talked about how this movie is specifically about loss, and like Lex was talking about how like he's been thinking about like death and loss and stuff in that regard.
Yeah, like I don't want to be overly morbid, but the stuff that's been going through my mind aggressively lately is stuff like, everybody I care about, this could conceivably be the last time I see or speak to them. Like I've become very aware of that. Yeah. And in a way, right, like death gives meaning to life. So my hope is that once I move past the weight of that concept, it will generate a greater appreciation for all of those moments. But this has been, a lot of that in my head.
Yeah. And I also feel like it's not like it doesn't weigh heavily on me, but like I think about it every so often. Like I was recently watching the second season of Atlanta, and there's the really I guess renowned episode Woods, which is when Alfred gets lost in the woods and he meets this drifter who may or may not be real. And there's this quote from it that
great episode.
Yeah. There's this quote from it that sticks with me where he's like, the only people who have time are dead people, which is like, it's true. Like we're all here for such a finite amount of time. And like, it's, you have to figure out what you're going to do with that time. And you can't just like sit there and like waste it, because essentially we're all just like, every second is a piece of sand it's like counting down to your death day that you don't even know how long. It's like at this nebulous hourglass that is essentially counting down the moments until you're not here anymore.
Right. And most of what we do as people, there's a great book by Ernest Becker. It's called The Denial of Death that I read a few years ago, and it's basically about how just about everything we do, every structure that we've made, both literal and figurative, every system, every material thing is all directly in service of distracting ourselves from the reality that inevitably we will pass from this earth.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with that, but like, I don't think that's, I don't know. Like I feel like there's a lot of solace in like, just living in the moment and not thinking about it, so like when those thoughts cross my mind, I have to, just like try to stave them off.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I like, it's hard for me to think that like, oh, we've created everything just so that we don't have to accept that we're going to die. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot to that, but I don't think that's like the only reason, like we just need to use our time too, like to entertain ourselves and stuff like that, so that we don't go crazy thinking about fucking nothing. Right.
Yeah. And I feel like that was a lot of the motivations of like a lot of the ancient, or not even ancient, but like a lot of older creators wanted to make things that existed beyond themselves. I was I think a couple years ago, I was in London, and I was at the like London Museum, where you see all these like all this shit that like they had stolen from different cultures and things of that sort. But beyond that piece, there's this idea that like there's all this stuff that lasts throughout these centuries. Like there are these statues and things that people have made. There's like the Sistine Chapel, which is like a painting, or well, it's more than just a painting, but like it's this piece of art that like exists beyond generations. And I had this moment where I was thinking about how that isn't necessarily a big thing. Like a lot of our art and a lot of our writings and a lot of our creations are now they're now digital. And so like
they're finite.
Yeah. So like the moments that like something happens and all the servers go down, a big chunk of our history also goes with it. Like the fact that like we are digitizing all these books and and now those are going away. And essentially, the moment that like we stop using electronic technology for whatever reason, like that is where a lot of our culture and our history goes.
Right, an EMP goes off one spot you don't want it to, and suddenly mass amounts of culture and history are just gone.
Right. And these little computers in our pockets, we're more so we're using a lot as a way to kind of put pieces of knowledge outside of our brain. We're outsourcing knowledge to them so that we don't necessarily have to store things long term. And so like we take for granted how like memorizing dates and stupid like facts from like the things that we learn in school. We kind of take for granted how important that is, in that like a lot of history long ago was oral history. Like you knew facts because it was passed down from generation to generation. But now we don't have to do that. Like we can look up when something happened or how things happened at the blink of an eye. But like that's not necessarily like gonna be a thing forever.
Right.
Which is a really crazy thing to think about.
Yeah.
Because like you would imagine that once we're all gone, once our once you know, like let's say some civilization comes and is like let's do some archaeology on Earth, then like their records they won't be able to read a certain amount of things because like they don't have a CD player, DVD player, or whatever. So like trying to figure out what our society was all about will be so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, they'll find a whole bunch of old smartphones and other devices, but without the culture still in place, right? Eventually all of those servers would go offline, all of those devices, their batteries would die and start to kind of decompose within them. There's no way to get that information now.
Right.
Unless somebody with an incredible amount of foresight thought to print out the entire internet, like it's a big, like a generations of people took on this task, there'd be no access to that information anymore. It would all just be gone.
It sounds like the Book of Eli.
I mean, was it good? Was it great? Did we just rewrite the next Book of Eli?
I mean, I guess. Eli 2.
Can we get Denzel Washington to come on this podcast and talk about his thoughts on these ideas? He was in that movie, right?
Dude, if he did the Equalizer 2, he will do a Book of Eli.
I still don't forgive them for not titling it The Sequelizer.
Oh.
And when they complete the trilogy, they have to call it The Threequalizer. And then I will go. That's how you get me in that seat.
Dude, side note, Equalizer 2 is kind of cool.
I've seen neither Equalizer.
Don't.
I like the prequel series where he's the
prequelizer?
Kid. Yes, the prequelizer. Jeez. I mean, Jay, how do you feel about the finality of our thoughts and ideas? The fact that in 1,000 years, no one will be able to find this podcast.
Yeah.
Or Equalizer 2.
Right. Right. I feel like, I mostly agree with what you guys are saying. I don't have like anything crazy to expound upon, but it does remind me, I read Isaac Asimov's Foundation about a year or two ago, and I don't know if you guys have read that or know what it's about. Have you?
No. I have not read it. Well, tell the folks at home what it's about.
So it chronicles the 1,000-year history of this galactic civilization, and like it's like as if Earthlings evolved in the future, and we have like all the technology we need and crazy cities and stuff. And one guy comes in and he's like, our foundation and our city and everything will not last another 1,000 years. And he's like the supreme scientist who he just knows this stuff, so the government listens to him. And they like, all right, we're going to build another civilization on another planet, and you guys are in charge with collecting all the data of all the history of everything humans have ever done, and you're going to make basically a massive encyclopedia that's going to detail everything about our history. And he gets this permission. And then like there's really like no main character in the book, because then it just jumps like hundreds of years. And so then it jumps to like, I think like 100 or 200 years later, and the project has begun, over the last 200 years. And on a certain date, like 200 years after the project begins, there's a hologram that's going to play. And what it is the guy who, the crazy scientist, he recorded this hologram, back 200 years ago. And when like the heads of the committee or the government on this planet see this, he's like, listen, that whole encyclopedia thing, that was just a joke. We're not doing that. We really did is we're moved our civilization to this planet because if you follow all my rules, you will ensure like a longevity of a peaceful civilization, while the old earthlings and the old humans, like, they're going to die off because of the same problems that affect history always, like war and technology and everything, like the fall of empires and all that kind of stuff. So he like specifically lied to the government so that they can approve this project that will take thousands of years, so that he can really just build his own civilization based on like what he thinks civilization should be like. And then he starts like releasing holograms like every hundreds of years that have like even more rules and details on like what they need to do. And it's like he thought all this out thousands of years in advance. But yeah, that's basically it.
Does it?
So that ties into what you guys are saying slightly.
Does that end up working out for him?
Kind of. Like I'm trying to remember the ending, but like it doesn't leave on like a very absolute like happy ending. I think there's some kind of like foreboding at the end. But he's dead, so it doesn't matter. Like he accomplished what he set out to do, and that was like get through like the next 1,000 years or whatever.
Right. I mean, I feel like the idea is really interesting, but one man can't necessarily, like, my issue is that like one man can't dictate what the proper, like, how to make a utopia. So
right.
It would make me wonder how, like, how the longevity of the world that he's creating would go, and that, like, I wonder at what point people would rebel, and it's really interesting world building.
Right, or like what the quality of life is at that point, like what you're willing to sacrifice so that you can ensure that type of utopia. But from what I remember, it was very much like you could read it and be like, okay, yeah, this guy's right. Like this is how the only way for us to survive and like do something of meaning with our survival. I don't remember the details well enough to be able to like say exactly things, because this is a few years ago.
Yeah.
But
and
anyway, Foundations is a great book.
Right. And anyone interested in the premise, which you just laid out, should read the book and get the details for themselves. So like that's fine.
Right. It's a series though. I only read the first one. I don't know about the sequel.
Well, read the whole series, everyone. Get your foundation and then keep building on it. Boom. I did it. I'm going to leave now. See you later.
And it is weird. It is weird, though, how this story I'm telling you about Foundation chronicles 1,000 years of like a space civilization, and like the Fountain kind of chronicles 1,000 years in a way, and deals with space. So I'm going to say that that's a good parallel for me, as like why I brought that up.
Yeah. It also, like, the Foundation, the premise also reminds me of Snowpiercer, where this guy made this train with the rules and essentially destroyed the rest of the world, and so then it becomes the only way that people can exist, and it essentially the way that the Snowpiercer goes around in a circle, so too does their society, which I think is really interesting.
Very true.
Circles,
yeah,
bro.
Yeah. Snowpiercer is definitely a good parallel to that. I don't know if I totally bought Snowpiercer's ending, but it was a nice notion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like it ended. I feel like it ended the only way it could have ended.
I do not remember the ending of Snowpiercer. I remember Captain America eating a baby and getting into an argument with Ed Harris, and I don't remember what happens after that. Don't they derail the thing, right? Spoilers for Snowpiercer, I guess.
Right. They stop it, and
yeah, they blow up the train. The train, like a bomb goes off and the train derails, and the only survivors are the girl and this like young child boy, and they like walk out into the snow and see a polar bear, and it's like, I guess the Earth is warmed up enough for them to live on the land,
right?
But they're like the only ones, so I'm kind of like, okay, so this is some like Adam and Eve, like that's what I'm supposed to take, or no?
Right, and unless they're going to eat that polar bear,
I just don't see like a realistic. Exactly. I don't see a realistic way for them to survive after
I
that.
actually really like the idea of there being an after credits that just cuts to the polar bear covered in blood, and it's just like, yep, that's over.
And
Man's time is done.
You hear like from just outside frame.
Yeah. Because, again, kind of looping this back in, like mankind, our time is going to be over at some point. Let the earth have itself. Let the animals take back the world.
Well, you say that because you're not going to have to be there for the end, right? Like if we were the last generation or whatever, like then how would we deal with it? I feel like that's such a different. It's so hard, it's so easy to look at like literature and look at films and stuff and like be like, yeah, like this makes sense and this is how it should be. But then like when you're faced with that moment of death and it's like, I don't know, man.
No,
it's like, but wait, I didn't think it would happen to me.
No, I actually.
Right, exactly.
Here's the thing, though, is I actually feel like I don't think that I think that faced with that reality, I think I'd be like, yeah, I mean it's time, because I always watch these movies and these shows and like read these stories where it's always like mankind trying to survive on their last bits and I feel like none of them really ask the question, like, do we deserve to move on? And like usually we are the cause of our own like undoing, and it's these people who are the last survivors of whatever we did to ourselves. And it's like, no, like you get to that point, then you've forfeited your right to like claim to have the high ground to live and keep moving on. Like I get being in that moment being like, I'm not directly responsible for it, but like,
Right. Yeah, I mean there's a difference between like what we're responsible for and what we personally want, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying is like just the human instinct and the human emotion, like it's so easy to say these things and look at things that talk about the end like this. But then like I don't know, like when it comes down to it, am I gonna feel any kind of like peace or solace over the way I'm going out or the way things are going out? Like I don't know. I just feel like the natural instinct of self-preservation is just will overwhelm everything, and there's no way I'll be able to look at like death in the end and be like, man, this is metaphorical and this is great, like.
Those were his last words.
That's a metaphor. No clue what the fuck he was talking about. He was pretty doped up at that point.
Yeah. Well, there are those guys who like they say like the most killer last words ever before they die, right? Like I remember I looked up a Wikipedia page of like famous last words, and there's some pretty badass shit on there. But it's like, man, those people, they're what, like 1 in a million people who can just take it like that?
Right.
Not me.
My last words are going to be, don't tell them I pooped my pants. And then that's the end. We all shit our pants when we
died
die.
as he lived. He would have wanted it this way.
It's like that scene in the Molly Ringwald movie where he holds up the panties, except it's my dirty drawers. He's dead.
I don't know what movie you're talking about.
It's either 16 Candles or it is it's one of the other like John Hughesy, like Molly Ringwald movies.
It's not The Breakfast Club.
No, it's not The Breakfast Club. It's one of the, it's whichever one has Aaron Michael Hall, because Aaron Michael Hall does Anthony Michael Hall. He does the panty holding. Anyways,
Is that 16? I get 16
I
Candles
think
and
it's
Pretty
16
in Pink
Candles
mixed up frequently.
yeah, I haven't seen either one of them. I only know
I
them.
haven't seen either.
So one of those two. Anyways, that's a lot of explanation for a really dumb, gross joke. But we're in our last few minutes, so do you guys have any last thoughts about The Fountain? Any like lingering things that you really liked about it? Anything that hit you the wrong way but you just overlook? Guys, this is your last chance to talk about The Fountain. Then it'll go away forever.
Just like we all will.
Yes.
Like tears in the rain and whatnot.
Well, dude, let's be honest. It's already gone away. Like no one watches this movie. I can name like a handful of people that I know who've seen it. And word back in the day was that there's like a possible way that one day it'll come out on Criterion, and that would be amazing. But I just don't see it happening. You can't. It's not. It never even streams on anything. It's never on Netflix or anything. You just gotta rent it or buy it.
Yeah, I think the Blu-ray is $10 on Amazon.
Right. That's the Blu-ray is great, by the way. There's a great making of segment. Like I would say, like it's about an hour, and there's a 5-minute loop of just different chemical reaction loops of like a petri dishes and stuff. Like it's awesome. Like total zone out kind of visuals, but with the music of the film playing over it. And dude, that score, man, that score is amazing. There's like 3 different I don't know music or instruments that well, so like I'm probably gonna sound like a fool, but there's like 3 different sounds from different tracks on the score, and one of them is like that like haunting violin, I think, that like kind of starts up the movie when we first see him in space and he like floats around his bubble and the music starts like it's very sad. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that to me is like I don't know, like it just like creates something in me, and I can't like put a finger on it or say like what it is or why I like it or whatever, but like it just draws me in completely. And then there's like an 8-minute track that's like the entire climax, like the buildup of him like eating the sap and then going into the star and the explosion, which is just like has like tremendous like momentum moving through it, like totally emotional momentum building up until it literally explodes at the end. And then finally there's the last track at the end credits, which is just a piano. It's called The Last Man. It's called Together We Will Live Forever. The Last Man was the first violin.
I believe that was also the working title of the movie.
That was right. Yeah, The Last Man.
Interesting.
Yeah, which that's a cool title too, man. In fact, I would like that title more than The Fountain, because as much as it's about like the fountain of youth in a way, it's really about the tree of life, right? Yeah. Like it's not about the fountain specifically. It's more like what the fountain represents.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Tree of Life was already taken by Tree of Life is later a movie that came out in
the Terrence Malick
Terry
film.
Mal.
Mm-hmm. So he really missed his chance to steal that title.
So.
What?
Darren Aronofsky, failure to the end.
When Darren Aronofsky listens to this podcast, he's going to be very angry.
I know. He'll be like, you know what? That's what my movie was about. It was about success and failure. Failure in success. There's success in failure. I get it. I understand.
Mother's about my career.
Yo, you know what's crazy is that what he did was he basically like this film is like when you're pushing the art house cinema like to the max, right? Like this is completely like almost like this is a big budget art film in a sense, even though like the budget wasn't that big. But then like if you look at his next film was The Wrestler, which is literally the complete opposite or the complete opposite of the spectrum of cinema. Like it was shot like a Dardenne film, basically, like handheld cameras, no special effects, nothing. It's just a story about real people, a drama essentially. So I think it says a lot about like his career and his trajectory of how like he just went from that to the other. Obviously he had so much trouble making The Fountain that I can understand why he was like, all right, I'm just gonna do like the most simple thing in the world. But yeah, like his films afterwards, like if you follow like Black Swan, parts of Noah, and then Mother, how there's like a through line for sure of like the filmmaking, the way he shoots stuff and the way he has like these like building narratives that like climax like amazingly at the end. I'm sorry, I'm a huge Darren Aronofsky fan.
Yeah,
so.
That's why you're here, buddy. You know?
Just gushing over here, man.
That's what the show is for. It's all about that gushing. Motherfuckers better be in the splash zone. Hell yeah.
Sure.
All right. We gotta start wrapping up. So Jay, where can people find you if they want to talk to you more about The Fountain?
Find me on Instagram, MunchieKing131. That's Munchie with an IE. Yeah, there.
Awesome. Cool. Lex, where can people find you?
I am on Instagram and Twitter at @TheLexMichael.
Awesome. You can find me at TariJ. That's TaurijAY. And guys, if maybe this is your first time listening, maybe you're a seasoned missing out veteran. But if you have the time, take a few moments to go on whatever platform it is that you're listening on, whether it be Spotify or Google Play Store or iTunes. And just give us like a rating. That would be phenomenal. It'll help other people find us. It'll help
our descendants know you were here.
Exactly.
Learn a little bit about our culture and our history before all the servers go down.
Yeah. There will be cockroaches and missing out based on your recommendations.
Still be listening to the podcast generations, eons after we have passed.
They'll be like, vaping birds, ha ha ha, give me a little bit more of that giant rat. But yeah, please help support the show. We thank you guys for listening. And any review we get, we read it here on the show, so we appreciate you. Make sure if you have a chance, hit us up on the Missing Out hotline. Let us know what you're into, or let us know what you thought about The Fountain. If you don't know the number, it is 978-MISS-OUT. That number again is 978-MISS-OUT. Once more, I really want to thank Jay for stopping by and chatting with us and letting us get real weird and existential.
Yay.
All right, we will see you next week, guys. You've been filled in.
What?
Filling it in. Hell yeah. It's my new catchphrase. Did you forget? It's so good.
Gross.
You've been filled in. I'm filling you in with this thick, juicy information.
I feel very uncomfortable in my place of work.
Okay, bye.
Did you know a turkey puppet once ran for the presidency of Ireland? Did you know that meat once rained from the skies of Kentucky? Did you know that there was an emperor of the United States for a while? Then listen to the Wiki Ship Down podcast.
We live in an age when the sum total of humanity's knowledge can be found in your pocket on a smartphone at any given time. But when that knowledge is peer editable, like it is on Wikipedia, what does that say about mankind? So follow us down the digital rabbit hole as we drink, joke, and curse our way through the random button on Wikipedia and see where our journey through humanity's knowledge takes us.
While you're at it, follow us on all social media at Wiki Ship Down. I'm Ruth Ann.
I'm Ryan, and be sure to find us every Wednesday on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to podcasts.